here on this Thursday morning. Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing good. Billy, before we get to some of the DK Moore stuff and the football recruiting, David Patrick was announced yesterday. He's coming back as associate head coach. Matt McMahon made that announcement yesterday afternoon. I talked a little bit about this before having you on. I think this is an enormous hire. Anytime you can get a sitting head coach, in my opinion, I think that's a huge success. But with Patrick's pedigree, his experience in the league, and really now his history, this was a home run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to find proven assistants that you can trust and elevate your staff, from time to time. I mean, when you get an opportunity to grab a guy who's been a sitting head coach, it adds to the experience level of your staff. It just adds so much. And obviously he's incredibly accomplished. We know what he's done on the recruiting trail for the most part, if you've even paid attention a little bit to LSU basketball. So to bring him back was a really, really big opportunity, and they took advantage of it and got him back.
Anybody we should watch out for in basketball here? I know that they've had a successful run with Miller, and they got the guard out of Florida. I know that Patrick's being late. He's added late to the process here. Do we expect anything immediately?
Yeah, I don't think you expect anything immediately. Things are starting to heat up this summer. I mean, with basketball recruiting, the live periods that the coaches have been going to and getting out and seeing players. We've seen some new offers go out. Kobe Edwards picked one up. He's one of the better guards in the country that's kind of on the rise. But really, I mean, Matthew Bruni on our side has really covered it well. He laid it out, some of the top targets for the LSU staff right now. But Chris Chinnack is one of the top prospects in the country. He's the number one player in Louisiana. He plays for Newman, and he's a top 10 power forward. And LSU has to have him right at the top of their board. And he's really emerged as a prospect that we love at On3. We've got him in the top 20 overall prospects in America. Could end up being, a five-star prospect when you talk about the programs that are after him as well. Kentucky's starting to get in there a little bit. Houston's recruiting him heavily. Oklahoma. There's some others that are starting to really heat up in terms of their pursuit of him. But LSU's been the one that has really made its push, and it starts with Matt McMahon. He's really taken the reins there and really started to push for him over the last couple years, because he's been on the board for quite some time as being somebody that LSU really likes, and obviously he'd be a national prospect. So their board is starting to pick up steam in terms of being set, and getting guys on campus for visits will be the next step as they watch and prioritize these different prospects over the summer. But LSU's kind of been on a little bit of a heater in that respect, with finishing strong with Victorious Miller. They've just been able to kind of put some things together on the trail lately, and LSU finished with a top 10 transfer portal class as well. So Matt McMahon is starting to really get comfortable now that he's been here a couple of years, and I think we'll see that pay off on the recruiting trail as well.
Boot up. All right, Bill, since the last time we talked, DK Moore has decommitted from LSU. I don't think a lot of surprise here when you look at the grand scheme of the story. What do you make of it?
Yeah, this one has a lot of caveats, I guess, right? He grew up with the story of wanting to play at LSU, with OBJ being his favorite player, and obviously he built a good relationship with Cortez Hankton, and you saw Bryce Underwood being the number one quarterback in the country and prospect in the country committing to LSU. That was a big moment, and DK Moore had already been committed to LSU for a few months by then. But I think anytime you're an out-of-state, especially a truly national elite prospect, and you make a commitment just about anywhere as early as he did, all the way back before his junior season, it's hard to keep those guys committed. And there's a lot going on in this recruitment. I think he's certainly one of the higher guys in terms of the NIL spectrum for the 2025 class, and rightfully so. I mean, he's the number one receiver in the country, top 5 prospect overall. And I mean, I think he's somebody who could be a instant impact wide receiver as a freshman. And there's only a handful of those guys that, really can make that big of an impact. And even Jamar Chase and obviously Terrace Marshall was coming off of an injury going into LSU, but and Justin Jefferson, they didn't make huge impacts their first seasons on campus. I think DK Moore is just that talented, and where this kind of maybe hurts LSU even more is where the receiver room is going to be next year. They really need to land an elite wide receiver overall. So, I mean, whether it's Decorian Moore, whether it was Khalid Lockett, Jamie French, there are a couple other guys that they're on, they need to come away with one of them, or else you're going to be sitting looking in the portal this December and feeling the pressure of landing a top flight transfer wide receiver, and those are also highly competitive, tough to come by, all of those things. And so, I mean, looking at DK Moore in that perspective, it hurts that he backs away from this commitment, because LSU you need a difference maker to come in at this receiver position for next season, in this next recruiting cycle for 2025. But I said on our board, I said, I'm not surprised, and I think people took that as, oh, well, you were expecting this. No, I wasn't expecting this at this time, or I did not know that he was going to decommit. And I think you've just got to look at it from the perspective of Oregon, Ohio State, Texas have not let up. They've not stopped pushing for him. And they were all the schools that had really gotten him on campus more recently than LSU. He didn't end up coming in for the LSU spring game, and he ended up going to Ohio State. And I think that's where we can kind of look back and say, all right, maybe should have really said, okay, this kid could very well end up decommitting and is likely to decommit. But I wasn't surprised in the sense that those three schools had been pushing. LSU hadn't gotten him on campus in a minute. You knew going into the summer he was going to take official visits, and he wanted his decision finalized during the end of the summer, because Duncanville just really doesn't, unless you're a late riser, doesn't really like recruiting processes to play out into the fall. And so all of that timeline got crunched, obviously, and he felt like he was at a point where it was best to decommit. And honestly, it helps LSU in the sense that now they can go and they know that they're not going to have Decorian Moore in the class. I mean, I'd be very surprised at this point, and that's just unfortunate for LSU. But they can go out and now sell even more playing time, selling more opportunity to the guys that are on their board at the wide receiver position this upcoming month, with official visits coming. Which before they were going to get Decorian Moore in at some point, you hope that you hold on to him, and even at the end of the summer, he could still flip. Now you have the open spot, in a sense, to then work with and say, okay, all right, now we know what he's going to do. He's not coming here. We can't sit around and mope. We've got to go get somebody who can help us right away. But, I mean, it's just kind of when you have to hang on to a commitment for that long, it's really tough, especially, the pressure that Oregon and Ohio State and Texas were putting on him. I mean, they right there the entire time. And I look back on last summer, and it was a surprise that Decorian Moore had moved up his commitment to that point. It was a surprise to everybody but LSU, who of course knew it was happening. But that's never really something that you want to happen. I mean, the other schools were looking at it like, okay, we've got a year before things really get serious here. And that's just kind of the reality of it. And so early commitments are tough to hold on to outside of, in-state guys. I mean, even Derek Stingley decommitted and ended up back at LSU. So it wasn't surprising in the sense that other schools had pushed. They had momentum, and they got him to back off of it. I just didn't know it was going to happen. And so that was kind of the tough line to walk. He made other visits, but you didn't know for sure that he was going to do anything in terms of backing off or making another decision.
So who gets this attention now? Where does LSU's attention to wide receiver go?
Yeah, Khalid Lockett is even more important. He's another Dallas area wide receiver. He's a 5-star, ranked as a 5-star right now. He's got to be the guy that they turn the heat up on. They've had him on campus. He played in that 7-on-7 event with Bryce Underwood and Flo, but I'll be honest, I think Kalik Underwood's going to be a battle. And so they're going to have to really make some headway with the Jamie French, who is also starting to trend to Texas. He's trended to a lot of schools over the course of his recruitment. He's a former Alabama commit. So that, in terms of maybe the flavor of the week, so to speak, I wouldn't, until it gets down to decision time, I wouldn't necessarily get, worried because it could shift. But that is another 5-star receiver thereafter. And then C.J. Wiley, the son of Chuck Wiley, an LSU legacy, they're going to get a chance to host him for an official visit this summer. He's going to be tough to pull out of Georgia, but they've got to find a way to land one of these elite wide receivers. Even Louisiana right now, you look at some guys that could get offered, like Jacob Washington, Frizzell Shepard out of Scotlandville Mag. There are some guys on the radar, wide receiver wise, that they could bring in for camp and offer, but you just don't know right now that there's maybe a truly elite wide receiver floating out there in Louisiana. LSU's got to find a way to find that somewhat of a sleeper and make sure they can reel him in, so we can keep this kind of Louisiana wide receiver producing thing going, because it's just, we're at the stage right now where there's just kind of questions around who that guy could be for LSU in this class out of Louisiana. And I think LSU's got some good national names on the board, but all of them come with that battle that is a tough recruiting competition. And Cortez Hankton's going to have to sprinkle some magic and come up with a big land this summer.
Is Zay Martin realistic?
I think he's on the board. I know he's one of those players that has really caught a lot of people's attention on the 7-on-7 circuit this offseason, which I do love it when fans shift the, hey, 7-on-7, look at what he's doing, but also play the it's not pads for when it fits their argument. But right. Zay is a guy who's really emerged this offseason as somebody who I think can at least be on the board, and they'll evaluate him in camp. He's shown that he can be a credible pass-catching threat, and he has some offers. He has some recruiting attention, so I'm interested to see where that goes. I mean, he's certainly a guy they'll bring in for camp, and he'll get an opportunity to show his stuff.
Obviously, cornerback has been a position of need for LSU, whether it was in the transfer portal or in recruiting. Right now, they've got the state's top commit, the state's top player at that position, Jabari Antoine. A couple of other guys, Landon Hammond and Alden Anding. Hammond's from Opelousas High, and Anding is from Ruston High. We've heard their names pop up. Where does LSU stand?
Yeah, Landon Hammond is somebody that I think fits the mold of kind of a Corey Raymond cornerback, so we could see them offer there. It wouldn't surprise me if that was an offer that went out. A really talented player who's really picked up some recruiting steam. But a guy that I really love is Aiden Anding out of Ruston. I got to see them in person when they played LCA, and he had, I think, 2 interceptions. Maybe one was returned for a touchdown. I think he had a couple sacks. He had a couple pass breakups and big hits. I mean, he was the player of the game, so to speak, in that one, and that really put him on the radar. I think he had a couple of offers. I think he had Louisiana Tech was a big one for him at that time. Now he's Duke, Texas, a bunch of others, and he's emerged as one of the top couple players at the position for Louisiana this cycle. And I think he, just with what he's put together in this offseason with the camp circuit as well as his junior season, probably deserving of an offer sooner rather than later. And he can fit into that nickel. He can fit into a cornerback spot. He can play maybe some free safety. I don't think you can go wrong offering either of those guys.
Billy, a little bit about TK Francis, or about Torian Francis, the wide receiver who we've seen in his spring game make just tremendous plays. What type of player and prospect he is coming in?
Yeah, he's the wideout from Louisiana that is certainly on the radar. He has made some big plays over and over again, just in terms of the ball and He had a big spring game. He kind of reminds me of Racey McMath. He's a really good athlete. He's explosive. I think he's a big kind of problem on the outside. I think where you want to see him refine and get a little bit better is that route running and that crispness to that area of his game. But he's got the tools to be what his nickname is, man-child. And LSU's got, you've got to hedge your bets in the sense of he looks the part. He looks like he should be at an LSU. And he's backed that up on the field. So I think he's just kind of a nice ball of clay still for Cortez Hankton to work with, but he's certainly on the radar being a kid from Carr, and he's been on the radar for quite some time. So it was a good move by LSU to get him on early. I think he's got a chance to really be maybe more of a kind of a boom or bust prospect just because of his physical talents and what he could be. But yeah, I think he's got all the talent in the world to be successful.
Bill, great to see you. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk.